Hi, it's the M.L.M for the Soul channel. I do have a new topic for today. Before I begin, I'd just like to say, may the words and expressions of my mouth and the thoughts and meditations of my heart find favor and acceptance before you, Hashem. So this is the continuation of Mesillas Yesharim, Path of the Just, Way of the or called Way of the Upright, from the Ramchal, or Meshamayim Lomdim Mussar. This sefer is considered a sefer. From Art Scroll, it's the Yaf edition. This is what it looks like if you've never seen it before. And I will have a link below to Arso so you can check out all that they offer. So, last video I did was finishing up the chapter 7. And that was on the elements of Zerizus, which is alacrity. And that was talking about the two different elements. Beginning a mitzvah as soon as possible and completing without delay. So if you check out the last two videos, you can see more about that. And then now it's on chapter 8. BeEzrat Hashem, this is not as long as the chapter, so I'm going to be finishing it all at once today. And then next week, BeEzrat Hashem, going on to chapter 9, which is still about Zerizus, another part of it. So this one is called The Way to Acquire Zerizus. So the methods by which we acquire Zerizus are the very same ones as those through which we acquire Zehirus. Likewise, the various levels of methods to acquire Zerizus are the same as the various levels of methods to acquire Zehirus, as I have written above, meaning him, not me, in chapter 4. And commentary here says chapter 4 taught that Zehirus is acquired through the study of Torah in general, and more specifically through contemplation of the gravity of one's obligation to serve Hashem. Ramchal elaborated there on 3 levels of reflection that serve to motivate and inspire different types of people. So again, you can go back in my videos. I don't know which one that is on chapter 4, but you can go back and check that out too. And these methods and levels of contemplation apply to the acquisition of Zerizus as well, and will be explained more clearly at the end of this chapter. So he continues on. For at their essence, the matters of Zehirus and Zerizus are very closely related to each other. And there is no difference between them except that this one, Zerizus, applies primarily to positive commandments, and the other one, which is Zehirus, applies primarily to prohibitions. Commentary here. These are the primary applications of Zehirus and Zerizus. Though Zehirus applies also to the performance of mitzvahs, as Ramchal explained in chapter 3, and Zerizus applies only to avoidance of transgressions, as explained in Insight on page 115, which we did previously. In previous videos. So in the Seder Vikuach of Mesillas Yesharim, end of chapter 10, which we'll get to BeEzrat Hashem, the author that elaborates that Zehirus and Zerizus go hand in hand, and the essential difference between them is merely that Zehirus involves the revulsion of evil, whereas Zerizus involves the preference of good. Thus, these complementary traits together form the foundation of the two elementary aspects of Avodah Hashem, which is service of Hashem, Surmei Rabba Say Tov, turn away from evil and do good. So that's the difference between Zehirus, so you're turning away from evil, and Zerizus, doing the good. That's from Tehillim 34:15, that verse, Surmei Rabba Say Tov. Now, in the practical sense, Zehirus and Zerizus are obviously quite different because the primary focus of Zehirus is on avoiding the temptation of sin, whereas the primary focus of Zerizus is on seizing opportunities for mitzvot. At their core, however, each of these traits involves transcending the physical nature of this world, as explained in chapter 6 previously, and devoting oneself to the higher cause of serving Hashem. Each of them may thus be attained through contemplation of one's spiritual mission. So he's saying that even though that they have similarities, like one, basically, there's things about them, but they're really different in that one involves, avoiding the sin, whereas the other involves, doing the mitzvot. But their similarity are that you're transcending the physical, meaning the nature of this world, to devote yourself to Hashem. Okay, and he continues on. So the Ramchal summarizes this comparison, setting down the basic motivation for Zerizus. So he says, when a person, by engaging in proper contemplation, attains recognition of the truly great value of the mitzvot and the enormity of his obligation to perform them, he will certainly be inspired to perform the divine service and will not slacken from it. Commentary here, Ramchal discusses 2 ideas. One is the value of mitzvot, which includes the perfection that their performance confers upon someone by bringing him closer to Hashem, as well as the benefit that this brings upon the entire world, as explained in chapter 1. The other is the enormity of our obligation to perform Hashem's commandments, because that is His will. And then it says, Sidar Hashem, and Rabbi Chalman Wasserman, and Kovetz Mamar on Tshuva. So the ideas he's talking about is that the value of the mitzvot, in the perfection of performance, and also the benefit that it brings to everyone, to the world. Okay, continuing on. An additional avenue of contemplation is particularly useful in inspiring a person to zerizus. However, what can intensify this inspiration is focused on the many kindnesses that the Holy One, blessed is He, bestows upon a person, at all times and at every moment, and the great wonders that He does for him from the moment of his birth until the very last day of his life. For the more a person focuses on and contemplates these matters, the more he will recognize His great death, the Almighty, who is so good to him. So that's another way to, like he's saying, inspire you to zerizus, zerizus to the mitzvahs. Zerizus to mitzvahs, you say, hurry up to go do. So meaning, he's saying, Hashem did all these kindness for you from the time you were born till your last breath, and then you realize, wow, how much do you owe Hashem, right? So then he continues on, these thoughts will be the means to prevent him from being lazy or lax in his divine service. For indeed he will reason, since he surely cannot compensate Hashem, blessed be He, for His kindness, he should at least offer thanks to His name and fulfill His commandments, right? You think that's the absolute least bit of what he could do, like the minimum obligation. Okay, and the commentary here says, Ramchal echoes the words of David M.L.M, who declared, how can I repay Hashem for all His bounty to me? I will raise the cup of salvations, and the name of Hashem I'll invoke in gratitude. That's from Tehillim 116, 12, and 13. I will thank you, O Lord my God, with all my heart, and I will give honor to your name forever. For your kindness towards me is great, and you rescued my soul from the nethermost depths. It's also from Tehillim 86, 12, and 13. And then additional commentary from Rabbi Charna in Iyunim notes that Ramchal in this short passage encapsulates a theme expounded on at great length by Chovos HaLevavos, whose entire Shar HaBechina, as well as numerous other passages in that work, develops the principle that man must reflect upon the wonders of creation, especially those that affect him, and make it possible for him to exist. Chovos HaLevavos cites many proofs that this is an obligation, for contemplating the Almighty's wonders and kindnesses will help one recognize His greatness, and will inspire one to serve Him enthusiastically in gratitude. Ramchal returns to this topic in chapter 21, where he notes that intense contemplation of Hashem's kindnesses and love for His people is a vital tool in acquiring the trait of Hasidus, which is a much higher rung of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's spiritual ladder. He's saying this is from, Chovos HaLevavos is saying that that's what he's talking about in Shar HaBechina, where we're supposed to reflect on all these wonders and everything Hashem does for us, meaning that it'll inspire us to be more grateful and to do His commandments. Ramchal continues. Ramchal demonstrates the universal relevance of his theme. Now, there is no person, whatever his situation may be, whether he was poor or wealthy, whether he was healthy or ill, who does not experience many wonders and kindnesses in his situation for which he must be grateful to Hashem. For regarding the wealthy or the healthy person, it is obvious why he must be grateful, as he is surely obligated to Hashem, blessed be He, for his wealth or his health, or for his health. The poor person too is obligated to Hashem for the fact that even in his poverty, Hashem provides him his livelihood in a miraculous and wondrous manner, and does not let him die of starvation. Commentary here says this means the means by which a poor person receives the meager income that ensures his family's survival are at times more amazing than the means by which a wealthy person amasses his fortune. So you see, he's saying like a poor person, it's amazing how he's able to get by, and that's even more miraculous than the wealthy person getting all his riches. And I don't know if he's going to continue on to say this, but it's the expression, and it says it in the Torah. I forget where it is. I think it was in the Varm. Don't quote me on that, but my strength and my power, my this and my this gave me all this thing. No, that's what happens. A lot of times you hear stories of people who are they say, oh, when I finally make my money, blah 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 blah, I'm going to be helping this and helping that. And then when it push comes to shove, a lot of them don't. It falls through the cracks and they don't do what they say they're going to do. So wealthy people, they're supposed to become. Hashem gives people wealth in order for them to use it for a good purpose, but it doesn't always turn out that way, unfortunately. Okay, so continuing on, the sick person as well is obligated to Hashem for sustaining him in life despite the severity of his illness and his wounds, and not allowing him to descend to the grave. Commentary here says, however, sick a person may be, he is indebted to Hashem for life itself. So still, it doesn't matter. Hashem still gave you life, even though you're sick. So the same applies, and continuing on, the same applies to any similar situation, so that ultimately there is no person who will not acknowledge that he's indebted to his Creator. So again, like I said before about the wealthy person, a lot of people don't. They forget about that. Everything else goes on, and they don't connect with that. So, and the commentary here says, no one can claim that his Creator owes him anything, neither riches, nor family, nor health. Therefore, even when Moshe prayed to enter Eretz Yisrael, he asks of Hashem as a gift, and not as compensation for his good deeds. That's from Zvarim Rabbah 2:1. In this vein, Chavos HaLevavos asserts in Shar HaBitachon chapter 4 that even if a man should amass more mitzvot than the sands of the seas, it would not suffice to match a single one of Hashem's kindnesses. Man thus stands indebted to his Creator no matter what his status in this world. This realization, however, is in direct conflict with man's tendency to take good things for granted. Those who are well off financially and physically attribute their success to their own hard work or intelligence. I just said that, so he's bringing that up here. And those who suffer misfortune blame their troubles on Hashem. So meaning the ones who are well off, I'm saying this, they take it on themselves that I did it. And then the ones who, have problems, they blame Hashem. So, they go both ways. Rather than recognizing their own shortcomings and do not thank Hashem for the good that he bestows upon them, even in their unfortunate circumstances. And then it says, see Mishlei 19:3. Ramchal teaches that careful contemplation can help one overcome this tendency and recognize that regardless of one's situation, he owes Hashem enormous gratitude. That's from Sifsei Chaim Midos, Volume 2, page 444. Okay, continuing on. Ramchal reiterates the preceding principle and adds another point to contemplate. When a person focuses on these kindnesses that he receives from Hashem, he will certainly be inspired to serve him with alacrity, as I have written above, meaning the Ramchal, not me. And one will be motivated all the more if he contemplates the fact that all his good fortune depends on the hand of Hashem. Again, I just want to say his hand, there's no hand, it's just, mushal, to get the idea. Blessed be he who can withdraw it at any moment, and that whatever he needs and whatever is essential to him can come only from Hashem Hashem, blessed be he, and from no one else. By virtue of this realization, he will certainly not become lax in performing the service of Hashem, blessed be he, so that he should not be punished and be deprived of something that is essential to him. The commentary here says, when a person realizes that he is totally dependent upon Hashem, he will be motivated to perform the mitzvot with alacrity in order to deserve Hashem's blessing. And continuing a commentary says also, performing mitzvot for the sake of reward is not the ultimate goal. For this would be to serve Hashem shalom lishma, which is not for its own sake. And we are enjoined to serve him lishma, for its own sake, not for reward. And that's also says the Avos 1:3 and below chapter 16, where it talks about that. However, the Talmud in Pesachim 50b teaches that even if a person is not on the level of studying Torah and performing mitzvot for their own sake, he should do so for lesser motives, because once he becomes accustomed to serving Hashem, he will eventually do so for its own sake. Ramchal therefore adds this motivational tool. If someone fails to be inspired by recognizing his indebtedness to Hashem for his past goodness, let him at least be motivated by a desire for future benefits. So he's saying here, meaning if you're not going to do it lishma, you do it lo lishma, still, you should still do it. But he's saying that even if you don't recognize that you're indebted to Hashem for everything that he gives you, at least use it as a motivation to do the mitzvah because of what you could get, what you could be getting in the future, even though, again, we don't deserve anything at all, ever. Okay, and that's, Ramchal makes it clear here, and that's understood. Okay, continuing on, now a brief summary. Now you see that I have included in my words here in this chapter, again, it's not me, it's Ramchal. Every time I say that, I just have to reiterate that. The same three levels of motivation that I delineated above in chapter 4 regarding Zehirus. These motivations are effective for Zerizus as well, since as stated above, Zehirus and Zerizus are essentially two aspects of the same subject. And it says in the C note 2, the one that we just read about, how it's one is talking about the positive, and one is talking about to go perform the good, and one is to stay away from the evil. Okay. And then he says, so the matter of how to acquire Zerizus may be derived from the related issues of acquiring Zehirus. Ramchal spells out the three levels of motivation with respect to Zerizus. What I mean is that for those with a wholesome perspective, the inspiration will come from the viewpoint of their obligation to fulfill Hashem's commands, and from the viewpoint of the importance of the deeds they are obligated to perform. And commentary here says this was mentioned in the beginning of the chapter, and see above note 3 and also chapter 4, note 5. Okay? And then continuing on, he says, for those on a lesser level than the first group, motivation will come from the viewpoint of their future position in the world to come and its glory. An individual in this second group will be motivated to act with Zerizus so that he will not suffer demulation on the day of reward. When he sees the great benefit that he could have achieved by performing mitzvot zealously and instead forfeited by being lax in their observance, and Ramchal will elaborate on this point in chapter 4, on note 11 through 15 there, so that was what we talked about when we talked about Zehirus. The Ramchal also here states, commentary, that he included references to all three levels of motivation here in this chapter, yet this point has not been mentioned. Perhaps his message earlier in this chapter about contemplating one's great debt to Hashem was directed to this group. While some contemplation can be potent and motivational tool for anyone, it is most effective for those whose main concern is about their share in the world to come, as it goes without saying that one who ignores his debt to Hashem will suffer intense humiliation on the day of reckoning, when he will be held to account. As Rav Yisrael Salanter famously remarked, and says, see, Tenuas HaMussar, Volume 1, page 78, this world is like an expensive hotel where every treat carries a steep price. So he's saying that this idea of motivation, of that Yor Hashem, is that the motivation of they're worried about their share in the world to come. Okay, so continuing on here. Let's see where I was. Okay, and for the general populace, motivation will come from the viewpoint of their position in this world and its necessities, for which they are dependent upon Hashem alone, and which they can merit only through proper performance of His mitzvot. This commentary here says this was mentioned earlier in the chapter, and see above note 8, and also chapter 4, note 20. And then all this is along the lines of what I explained there in chapter 4 above. Again, that's Ramchal saying, I is Ramchal, regarding the methods of acquiring zehirus. So to acquire zehirus, now we say in commentary on that, what I just said is the loftiest form of motivation is to recognize how transgressions distance the person from Hashem and thus thwart his pursuit of perfection. Similarly, the highest level of motivation for the acquisition of zerizus is to recognize how mitzvot bring a person closer to Hashem and thus help him attain perfection. So he's showing you the way they're kind of similar but opposite, meaning zehirus is to recognize that transgressions will push you further away from Hashem, so you're further away from pursuing perfection, as opposed to zerizus, which is the highest level for acquiring motivation to acquire, to recognize that mitzvot will bring you closer to that perfection, closer to Hashem and to that perfection. And that's, I'm just kind of breaking it down a little from the commentary here. And the commentary continues, a less lofty form of motivation for zehirus is to be cognizant of the humiliation and loss of prestige one will suffer in the world to come if he violates the Torah's commandments. Likewise, this cognizance serves as an impetus to energetically perform mitzvot in this world and never to forfeit an opportunity to do so. Finally, the least lofty form of motivation of zehirus is the fear of heavenly retribution in this world. The same fear should prompt one to perform the mitzvot with zerizus. So now you can see how they're kind of connected. And if you're kind of a little lost with what I said, then kind of go through this video a couple times till it makes sense. But they do have a connection, but their difference is that it's basically the same levels of motivation can be used for either one. Either staying away from what causes you to sin, as opposed to coming closer to Hashem by doing the mitzvah. Okay, so now, towards the end, this is the summary now of chapter 8. So the method of acquiring zerizus corresponds to the method of acquiring zehirus. In addition, contemplating Hashem's benevolence and how one is dependent upon Him strengthens one's motivation to serve Him with zerizus. The various levels of contemplation described in chapter 4 as means of motivation to zehirus for different classes of people provide motivation to zerizus as well for each respective class. And I hope and pray that we will all merit to live and see the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days and the rebuilding of our final and everlasting Beit HaMikdash. Amen. And thanks for watching.